Hey there, I'm Jesse Hall, and I'm your host for Business Elite Brevard Edition, the podcast that brings you all of the influencers, innovators, and industry leaders from right here on the Space Coast. And good morning. This is Jesse Hall. It's a beautiful Friday here on the Space Coast, and as we are going live, again, I'd like to welcome you all. Feel free to get engaged. We do take comments, questions, and so forth if you're watching the live stream on Facebook. So again, good morning. Real exciting topics today. We're going to kind of dive into a little bit of the aerospace world, and also, of course, what's going on with the EDC here as we do our quarterly update. And again, pretty excited about our guest. He is a board chair of the EDC, and he has quite the extensive background, as we found in his resume that he provided for us. Really, a really connected and deeply ingrained individual here in the studio. So very exciting stuff. And here we are live. Real quick, good morning, Joe. How are you?
Good morning, and I want to do a shout out to my mom for that bio that she sent you about me. Moms are good for that.
You know, if your mom did that, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, she did.
You know, looks like you have the talent pool is genetic, right? So
I like to think so.
Yeah. So that hey, listen, you know, anytime you could have family still be, you know, a real big presence, and of course, you know, our biggest cheerleaders, it really helps. No matter what your you know, passion and your priorities lie. So it's nice to have that reinforcement saying you're doing a great job, keep it up. So real quick, for those who don't know, the Economic Development Coalition, Commission. I apologize. That's the thing with acronyms. Sometimes you don't always remember which letters mean what. So I'm sorry. I'm just getting on the phone because I need to reference your bio, because I wouldn't be able to remember this. I mean, you got a lot of things going on, but I think it's all mention worthy. And again, to introduce you, let the listeners know exactly what you do, who you are, and so forth. I mean, let's start, because a lot of this begins during your working career. But let's talk about Joe, mayor of where you grew up. Tell us about your childhood.
Sure, you betcha. Well, I grew up in New Jersey, just outside of New York City.
Okay.
So I'm very comfortable here in Florida because half of the state is from New Jersey.
That's
My
right.
wife is from Michigan, so
Okay.
the other half of the state, particularly during the winter months, is from Michigan. So we feel very comfortable, very right at home here,
Right.
but we get to enjoy the warmer weather. I remember arriving here in 2013 from the Houston area.
Mm-hmm.
It took 6 months before I heard someone say y'all.
Oh.
And I took note of it. It was at a McDonald's over at Cape Canaveral, and I said, "Hey, you said y'all. That's good." I haven't heard that. She
Right.
says, "Well, that's because most people are from New York and New Jersey. They don't say y'all. They say yous guys."
Use.
So, but I did grow up in New Jersey and had a great childhood. Really, my hometown, very small hometown, but now is more like a bedroom suburb of New York City. So very transformative in
Right.
terms of what's going on in my hometown now. But I haven't been there for really in terms of living since like 76 when I went to graduate school down at Georgetown. So it's been a long time, but I have family in New Jersey, go to visit them periodically, and so
You fly to Newark?
love my connections there. Yeah, I fly to New York. Sometimes I fly down into Philadelphia. I see a brother who's down in Baltimore, so it works out pretty good.
When I visit my family in New Jersey, I fly into Philly.
Yeah,
because
I've often flown into Philly.
Yeah, because they're all South Jersey. Vineland is where my mom's from, and I got family from Cape May all the way up. You know, but yeah, New Jersey boys. You know, no, I love to visit too. Not this time of year. It's a little bit of a tundra up there.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But the summers are great. My uncle, he has a brilliant tomato farm, and just the biggest, juiciest red tomatoes. Man, make a great salad. I mean, you just eat them right off the vine. They're so delicious. So cool, New Jersey. And so you did I guess, your primary schooling there.
Yeah, and I went to school, William Patterson College.
Okay.
And I still remember talking to I had a history and political science degree background.
Oh, okay.
And I remember going to my advisor and say, what am I going to do? I was a senior, and
Right.
I didn't want to teach high school. Too scary. And so I said, what am I going to do? And I was interested in international affairs and foreign policy. And he recommended I go to graduate school.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the top graduate schools that he recommended, the program was at Georgetown University, the School of Foreign Service. And so when I was accepted there, and how that happened, I am not really sure. I wouldn't want to have to repeat that achievement. Right. But I went there, and it was a great experience and really started my career path.
Now, you mentioned Georgetown, and what was the program?
It was the School of Foreign Service. So it was an international affairs.
Oh, okay.
People thought I joined the Foreign Legion, but I had not.
It's kind of confusing. Like, is that a military branch?
Well, I think it goes back to the State Department Foreign Service officers.
Okay.
And so we had a lot of folks. Matter of fact, the lead for the program when I was there, Dr. Chet Crocker, he ended up serving as the Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs for 8 years under President Reagan.
Oh,
so
fantastic.
he did all the shuttle diplomacy in South Africa and Zimbabwe and so forth.
Fantastic. Okay.
So you had those kinds of caliber of people moving in and out of academia and public policy and government service. So it was an easy connection.
That's curious. Yeah. It almost sounds like it'd be a school that breeds spies. Because of the foreign involvement.
My guess is we had some folks there who ultimately went into the CIA or NSA or other place, and yes, FBI and so forth.
That's so funny. It seems very distinguished. It seems like it's an exclusive school and not the type of class offered at just any university.
No, it was really a great program. It was a 2-year terminal degree, so you were expected. So it was for a practitioner, and I love my classmates, and they came with all kinds of experience. So I'm coming right out of college, and yet we have some men that were military officers, others who had worked for the State Department, others and so forth. And
wow.
I was both impressed as well as overwhelmed. I lived in Arlington and would walk over to the university over Key Bridge. And I remember one time I'm walking back over Key Bridge and I'm thinking, oh, okay, I've survived 3 weeks and no one has figured out that I shouldn't be here.
Right.
So it took a little while for me to have the confidence in myself that I could participate in the program with the others. So I learned a lot from listening and try to continue to do that to this day.
Yeah, I think if anybody were to enter a program or a situation where they feel humbled, wouldn't you agree that they want to try harder?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I worked pretty hard to try to be successful.
Yeah, because you don't want to let yourself down or your peers down. They everybody has a little bit of an ego, but you can't let that pride get in the way of you applying yourself. Right. I think if you still have that humble, modest mindset, and that you could strive for more, and you're not already class leader or the straight A student, so to speak. But I think if you can still continue to apply, again, eat that humble pie and just say, this is a great opportunity just to digest as much as possible.
Well, and
prove myself.
And I think it engenders teamwork.
Right.
Because you're looking to work with people. You don't bring all the skills that are needed to be successful. We do the same thing at the EDC.
Right.
I don't know everything. Linda does. Linda Weatherman, our lead. She's a dynamo, and she covers the full range. And she's just amazing. But my colleagues and I, we try to bring our skills and abilities to bear to support the mission.
Now, did Georgetown, after this program, did that satisfy your education, or did you go on to
Yes, I've done other training and kind of lifelong learning opportunities. I got a chance to go to a 3-week program at the John F. Kennedy School up at Harvard University.
That sounds exciting.
Which it was again another great opportunity. But in terms of my formal academic career, I went from Georgetown and began working and worked in the Senate, in the U.S. Senate for 8 years. So
that's right, and that gets me to that completes our conversation of where you were brought up and some of your first educational backgrounds, which brings us to, you served, looks like 16 years in Houston, 21 years in Washington, D.C., and then finally relocated here to the Space Coast in 13.
Yeah.
What was Houston like?
We loved Houston. We have a soft place in our hearts for Houston. We raised our 4 children there. My wife Robin and I raised the kids there. They were young when we arrived. I think Stephen was our oldest. Well, I know Stephen was our oldest, but I think he was maybe 11 years old or so.
Okay.
And we had 3 boys and a girl, and we pretty much raised them there. In many respects, although all 4 of them were born in Washington, D.C., at Columbia Hospital for Women right there. It's now a condominium complex.
Is that right?
But they were born there at the hospital. And in the district, it's funny when they get to fill out forms and it says, what state, they're always saying, what do I put for a state? D.C.'s not a state, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
But when we went to Houston, they went to school there. They played soccer there. They did really their formative years, and they really considered themselves to be Houstonians and Texans first. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So that's a little bit of a cool history because, some people, again, within this industry of aerospace, especially Space Coast, we're importing a lot of people. So not a whole lot of people have been here their whole lives. In fact, to find a Brevard native, someone who's grown up or even third, second generation, is kind of tough. A lot of implants here. So BU being one of them, do you miss Houston?
I miss the people.
Okay. The relationships.
The relationships. But, my thought process on that is that they stay with you forever.
Right.
And you go back, and so you just add to that. So you're not losing anything, you're adding to it. I like my oldest son, Stephen, he likes social media. So when he moved, it was really critical for him to be able to stay in touch with people. And he always does. And he's our social media maven, so to speak. But so he's always saying, hey, Dad, it's so-and-so's anniversary. It's their birthday, or it's something like that. And I'll say, Stephen, did you wish him happy birthday? Right. Oh, yeah, already did. On behalf of the Mayer family, so so it's good. Yeah, our hearts in many respects are with the people in Houston. We're hoping, frankly, this weekend that they're going to be okay. There's some nasty weather coming through, and we do pay attention to what's happening back there.
Yeah, no, you gotta, especially having spent so much time. And what brought you to Houston?
We were right down by the Johnson Space Center, which was really cool. And and part of that heritage of working with NASA at the center there, and then being here at KSC, has a different feel. Houston doesn't launch rockets; they've got mission control.
Right.
But it's right. So it's right in the community too. And so it's kind of like a college campus there.
Fantastic.
Whereas here we launch rockets, so people need to stay back
and it's a secured facility with armed guards. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it takes a little bit more kind of getting around. That's impacted me just in terms of the logistics of doing my job.
I guess it would, because there are different locations. Whether you're Cape Canaveral or Cape Kennedy, we have different launch pads for different things. We have military stuff, and then we have more civilian and now public stuff.
Yes.
So that's, again, a lot. People sometimes don't realize that the shuttles go off one place and a lot of the satellite rockets go off another place.
Yeah.
So it could be confusing, to someone on the outside or a newcomer, who comes to town like, oh, I got to visit all these different places. I can't just go to one central place like I'm used to. So you worked directly with NASA or a contractor?
Yeah, I work for an aerospace contractor,
okay.
And we do work for NASA. We do commercial work as well. And so my association with NASA began really shortly after the Challenger experience. I left the Senate. In the Senate, I was dealing more with like national security issues and the Department of Defense. I moved over to be more representative of NASA programs and space programs. And frankly, looking back on it, was really cool. I will tell you that when I joined the Senate was at the end of President Carter's time in office, and President Reagan was coming on board. And we had that period of time where really you kind of looked at it as as the good guys and the bad guys.
Sure.
The good guys were for strong defense and the bad guys weren't.
Right.
So there was a partisan element to it. really changed when I went over to NASA. I'm dating myself here, but
Sure.
when I went back, the leadership of the House Science Committee and the Science Committee in the House, they authorized NASA programs. Well, the leadership was George Brown, a very liberal, in today's terms, very progressive Democrat from California, and Bob Walker, a conservative, somewhat libertarian Republican from Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Like, they probably didn't agree on much of anything.
Right.
But when it came to NASA, it came to space, they worked very effectively together. And I think that bipartisanship, that nonpartisanship,
right,
actually is critical to us in our future.
Especially with NASA, which is nonpartisan. I mean, I don't care who you are, it's exciting to talk about going to the moon and doing, space exploration. So, yeah, I could definitely see how politics would not get in the way of NASA. It's almost like a non-political, it's almost like political phobic, like you just can't,
but you can't,
it's not
you can't assume it.
Right.
You can't assume that that's the way it's always going to be. So you have to operate and work at that level. Maybe we get a chance to talk about Citizens for Space and some of the work that we've done to advocate on behalf of NASA and space exploration, and do it on a nonpartisan, bipartisan basis.
No, absolutely. We're certainly going to explore all those things. So once again, for those tuning in, we have Joe Mayer, and he is board chair of the EDC. And again, we're doing our quarterly kind of update, but real quick, what you've been listening to is just us getting to know Joe a little bit more intimately, because why would you listen if you don't really care? So what we do, through this process is to kind of introduce the guests and maybe find some common ground. Like, I learned that we both have family in Jersey, and that's part of our upbringing. And now that we're exploring Houston and what brought you there, but I got to backtrack. You keep mentioning, you were in the Senate. What district did you represent, or what state?
Represented the state of Utah.
Okay.
Which was really new to me.
Yeah, how'd that fall into you?
Well, it was interesting. One of the things I need to tell you is they used to tease me about my accent. You can imagine coming from New Jersey, working in Utah.
Sure.
Of course, I always protested that I didn't have an accent.
Right.
And then I remember the first Christmas I went home, and I was talking to my brothers and sisters and aunts, uncles, and so forth. And I said, "Holy smokes, you guys have an accent!"
Right.
But I came out of school, and this is somewhat of the similar advice I give to other young people who are coming out of school and looking for jobs. And the best advice that I was given by a colleague of mine, another student who had graduated a couple of years in front of me, was, go around to offices, but don't ask for a job. Ask to speak to someone who is doing the job or a job that you would like to do.
Right.
And get to know them. Figure out, how did they find their job? What do they do in there? And then talk to them about other opportunities, other people you should meet, networking.
Right.
And before you kind of do that and you figure it out. The one thing that was also the second thing that I kind of learned as I was going along was that while we speak of bipartisanship relative to NASA, and we don't want to have a country divided on a partisan basis, but knowing who you are was critically important. I tell students, if you're a liberal, progressive, Democrat, conservative, middle of the road, know who you are, because otherwise you won't be comfortable in a political environment working for someone. So frankly, I was from New Jersey. Most all the members from New Jersey were not members that I would have felt comfortable working for. I was kind of moderate, conservative, strong defense, and so forth. I didn't view them in that way. And so the people that I spotted tended to be from the West, like Utah. I was interested in the Senate because a 6-year term with a member versus every 2 years running for office continually seemed to be a lot more desirable. So I got lucky and got an opportunity to come on board with Senator Jake Garn from Utah, who ultimately flew on the space shuttle.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so and as an astronaut?
as a kind of a civilian astronaut payload specialist.
Okay.
Much like Congressman or Senator Bill Nelson.
Yeah.
Senator Bill Nelson flew. But different than John Glenn. John Glenn, original astronaut and so forth, and then came back later in his life when he was in his 80s, serving in the U.S. Senate and got to fly on the space shuttle.
Right. Very exciting.
That was a phenomenal experience. Very exciting.
Right.
My wife Robin was 8.5 months pregnant with our first child, with Stephen, and so we couldn't come down to see the launch.
Oh, too bad.
But trust me, we heard about it a lot.
No, I'm sure. DC was a buzz.
Well, Senator Garm would tell stories all the time, about he just loved space and had that opportunity, and he was qualified to do it. And so,
how much training does it take for a civilian to go up in a shuttle mission?
It took months and months.
So you're still doing all the rigorous stuff. He
spent a lot of time in Houston in training with the crew, preparing himself.
Underwater, zero gravity kind of environments.
The underwater is more for those who are going to do EVAs, the extravehicular activity spacewalks. So there's more of that there. But there were other activities and training that he needed to go through to fulfill his part of the mission.
Yeah, when you see the videos of the training of these astronauts, it looks pretty rigorous. Like, you got to be like a SEAL, background. It's tough, because you're trying to train for an environment that you've never been subjected to. Sometimes, going into orbit for the first time. That's got to be pretty,
these guys and gals they're phenomenal.
Yeah,
they are very impressive. A very diverse group. So you started off with the fighter pilot, the fighter jocks, and so forth. But it's transitioned, and you've got lots of folks with different backgrounds, archaeological backgrounds, and science backgrounds, et cetera, who are participating in the space program, and it's changing. So so that's good, and we're seeing a broader sense of the face of the United States and the face of the world as part of the astronaut corps.
Exactly. So for the listener's sake, you spent 21 years in D.C. before Houston,
right?
And then Houston prior to Florida,
right?
Just trying to get that timeline, just because there's a lot of puzzle pieces, and we got to make sure that people can see the whole picture. So that leads us to now relocating to the Space Coast. And
yes.
What brought you over initially?
With my company, there was a retirement here. The director of government relations was retiring, and I thought it'd be a cool experience. It matched up well with my background.
Okay.
And I remember coming home. I had this epiphany moment that this was a really good thing, and I really wanted to get that position.
Sure.
And so I called up my wife and I said, "Hey, are you doing anything for lunch?" And she said, "No." And so we met at a local Subway shop, and on the back of it was one of those typical back of the envelopes, back of the Subway napkin. I was kind of scoping out and drawing out, what the position was, who did it report to, where was I now, and I said, "Are you with me?" And she just looked at me like deer in the headlights and said, "Yes, I guess so." I guess so. But it's worked out great, and I had the opportunity to get the position. I've been thrilled. I really have been. It's been a great opportunity.
Perfect. So did as far as your commitment to the EDC, can you tell us about that story and how you found it, or were you solicited?
Sure. I've had, when I left Washington, D.C., where I did kind of government work, I really wasn't out in the community.
Right.
In Houston, I was, so I had became much more familiar with chambers of commerce, economic development kind of groups and organizations,
Sure.
et cetera, and why they're important. So one of the first things I did when I got here, and I knew of the EDC, and I knew of Linda Weatherman, because from a Houston point of view, she's a tough competitor.
Yes.
So
she mentions Houston all the time.
you know who she is.
Right.
Yeah, well, you remember Senator Scott or Governor Scott. Now,
Right.
it used to be Governor Scott and Governor Perry. And Governor Scott used to say that he used to call Governor Perry every month and to see who beat whom out in terms of creating new jobs.
Oh, that's so funny.
So Texas takes a lot of pride in that, and
Right.
so does Florida. So when I got here, immediately I knew that the EDC was the primo organization for business, in partnership with other organizations like the chambers. We have great chambers here.
Excellent chambers.
But one of the first people I said, okay, I need to go see Linda Weatherman. And I had known of her. I'm not sure if I was prepared for that much energy. She and I can't get even as board chair, I can't get my arms around all the things that the EDC does and is involved in. I know that there's a kind of a narrow view that all we do is projects to create jobs.
Right.
Not an insignificant thing and really core to our success and the success of this community.
Oh, huge. How would you describe what the EDC does to the public if nobody knew, ever heard of what an EDC does or so forth?
Well, first and foremost, because if you don't do your core mission, all the other things are not going to matter, really. You're not going to be around very long. So the core mission really is to recruit and expand and retain jobs here, to build a high-tech workforce, a high-tech business base.
Yes.
And then in conjunction with the leadership at NASA, like Bob Cabana has been the center director now for a long time, former shuttle astronaut, like people like General Shesh and General Monteith before him with the 45th Space Wing, working with them to diversify the economy,
right?
And that's proved critical. I was in Houston when the announcement was made that the shuttle was going to be retired. One of the thoughts I had, because I had colleagues here, was, oh my goodness, those poor folks down at KSC. They're going to be hurting.
Yeah.
In Houston, we had petrochemical, we had the medical center, and so forth. And so there's a high-tech base, and you figure you can kind of weather through that. But what was going to happen here? I still can't believe how successful this community, the Kennedy Space Center, the 45th Space Wing, industry, elected officials working on a bipartisan basis, and organizations and leadership of folks like the EDC and Linda Weatherman have been. Unbelievable.
And that's all the more reason why I had to get her on, Business Elite Brevard Edition, because she is one of those people who, I don't want to say it's a thankless job, but, she's not, someone to go toot her own horn, but I thought, somebody should really, tell, the Space Coast about this woman, because she's responsible for a lot of why maybe even they're here, why they're relocating. She, had put these steps in, in combination with the effort of all the staff and the board, of attracting all these jobs, making the climate very, very attractive. Again, and getting political when needed, finding the local state senators and other district reps to complement what she's trying to do, up at the Capitol, because it's a complete effort. We're not such a bubble here in Brevard County that we don't need help from Tallahassee.
Well, absolutely. And when you think about it, you think about a well-rounded individual. Well, the EDC has a well-rounded set of activities and efforts and initiatives that it takes. I've touched upon that core, without which there really isn't anything else. If you're not generating jobs and business and retaining and growing, you're stagnant. You're falling behind. You're losing it. You're not going to have a future. But around that, it's not the only thing you do. So you look at your workforce, you look at quality of life, you look at attracting new workforce, you look at how do you support cleaning up the Indian River Lagoon.
Sure.
The whole notion now, it's kind of come into one of our focus areas we call community of choice.
Yes.
Is how do you make this a community of choice, and the jobs will and the businesses in part will flow from that. But one of the things that I think of anyway, particularly during my time as board chair, and because of my age, so I'm part of the baby boomer generation.
Sure.
We're retiring.
Yeah.
We talk about technical change, operational changes, all the kinds of systems and hardware and things that we're doing. There's going to be a generational change.
Right.
And we've got to think what makes for a new generation. What makes Brevard and the Space Coast a community of choice for people who are not baby boomers?
Gotcha.
They kind of engage, or likely, in terms of their civic engagement,
right?
Policy issues that they're interested in, the kind of housing they would like, the lifestyle, the transportation, the entertainment, the schools, etc. It's changing. So I think that here again you have the EDC recognizing that, and under the rubric of community of choice being a key component, where we're going to be working with others to help define and shape the future, because 10, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, the space program is going to be different. It's going to change. But so is this community.
Yeah, the next generation, Gen X is going to be retiring, in 20 years. And, it's going to be a workforce full of millennials, taking charge, getting those leadership roles and becoming the executives of all these different corporations here.
The companies, the organizations, your county commissioners, it's going to have an entirely different look and feel. So how is that going to affect, and how do we stay at the cutting edge and be competitive for business and for jobs?
And I trust that you guys probably coach a lot of these companies in town, and I'm sure there's mentorship programs for that next generation to kind of follow that old guard, and as the old guard kind of, like you said, is pushed into retirement, or if they volunteer to retire, I'm sure there's got to be some shadowing, for this newer talent to assume these positions that have again been held for like the last 30 years.
Yeah, the things that kind of come to my mind, you see that in companies. Companies are very aware, aerospace companies in particular, in this community, very aware they have a generation that's going to be leaving the workforce, and they need to bring a new generation into that workforce, and the coaching and the mentoring that can be done. As long as you don't get into, we're doing it this way because this is the way we've always done it before. So you've got to be open to the learning and the new insights that folks will bring. The EDC, we're looking at in the chambers. Chambers now, virtually all of them have young professional organizations.
Yes.
When I started working as a volunteer and as an officer at the chamber in Clear Lake in the Houston area, we didn't have a young professional group. Now everyone does, because they recognize we need to bring them in. We need their energy, we need their ideas, and then back and forth we need the mentoring. When I got here, one of the what I consider the leadership groups that's really important for our community is Lead Brevard.
I was just going to mention them, yeah.
I had the opportunity in 2015. I think it's obligatory for me to say the best class ever. But in 2015, I had the opportunity to participate in the Leadership Brevard program. And here, you're talking about diversity of folks and experiences. But that's all part of mentoring, focused on our community and the future of our community. And Lead Brevard is a key component of that. And I think that's where the EDC is smart, too. The EDC is, if we're the quarterback, we're not the running back. We're not the tackle. We're not we can't be everything. But in partnership and in teamwork with other good organizations here in our community, we can kind of build the community that will be successful for the future.
I like that. Yeah, well, I mean, and it shows. It shows in, again, the talent that is being attracted, the companies that are being attracted. These are big names. L3 Harris, not only emerging, but bringing their headquarters to this county. I mean, such big news. The airport continues to expand. We're going to Philly with daily flights now, and so it's just very exciting. So I think people are seeing that. The changes in the community. Reflecting what the next generation is going to be attracted to, so we could keep them here, because like you said, of all the different places you could go, and especially with competing salaries and stuff like that, why would somebody come here and choose to work here for the next 25 years, raise a family here? So being that community choice, I mean, huge initiative. And what's great about the EDC, there's a couple of other ones. You talk about workforce, and Linda has, prides herself on some of those innovations, getting into the because we're kind of lacking some trade schools here. So getting into the high schools even, and offering a little part-time, what we called OJT, on-job training, back in high school. Where half the kids left and went to go work with parents or do a side job. But those aren't kind of like technical skills. Just because you're going to go work at a fast food place instead of spending the last couple of classes in school. What the EDC wants to do is really just cultivate a portion of the class, of every class, and give them a skill set, whether it's an optional class, like an elective or something, just anything to kind of introduce them, like, hey, you don't have to get the 4-year degree. Spend a year with us, and we'll put you in a machine where you're, starting at $60,000 a year.
Yeah.
And it's in the manufacturing nowadays. It's not what you maybe imagine, from some other photos.
Rosie the Riveter.
Yeah, not Rosie the Riveter anymore. Not the big, the Ford assembly line. Nowadays it's lab coats, it's sterile environments, well lit, great benefits. So there's it's a really exciting time to be in the workforce, I think, yes. Because you could learn some amazing skills and work with incredible technology that. For me, I almost feel like if I was like 25 right now, and if I could do it over, I would get, a CNC or a CAD design or something like that, because in the manufacturing process, you're really just learning these languages and plugging them into, a machine, and then you're fabricating stuff, from raw material that's going to be used to go up in space.
Well, and here on the Space Coast is a perfect environment for that. I look at the Kennedy Space Center versus the Johnson Space Center. Kind of a different workforce. The things that they do in Johnson, here we have a lot more hands-on hardware.
Right.
So those skill sets that don't require necessarily a 4-year degree, although we don't want to throw the 4-year degrees out.
Sure.
We have lots of jobs available in the Space Coast and Orlando area for folks who have engineering 4-year degrees, and they are critically important for us.
Yeah.
But there's a broader mix, and it doesn't have to be everybody going for that 4-year degree.
Exactly.
The EDC is very proud of an effort that we've made with the Certified Production Technician, the CPT program.
Yes.
Good opportunity for individuals to come in that don't want to pursue that 4-year degree, but are good with their hands, with their skills. I was just talking to my son out in Utah. He's interested in pursuing an opportunity to be a police officer. Right. But I was telling him, he's phenomenal mechanically with his hands, doing things and so forth. I said, you should take a look at some of these aerospace programs that are for certifications. And see if some of them might apply to you, because he's not inclined to go do a 4-year engineering degree.
Right.
But I could see him doing great things, working on hardware and systems that will help the United States from a national security point of view, from a space exploration point of view, commercial, just phenomenal. Yeah,
there's also other, like there's no shortage of opportunities, and what's great with the unemployment rate so great, but now. It's for the companies. It's all about employee retention. Like, how do I hold on to these guys? Because there's, the workforce or the pool of talent is getting less and less because everybody has a job now.
Well, yeah, and you're not winning in a community when the companies, in effect, quote, are borrowing, stealing talent from one another. Sure. That's not a successful formula for the future.
Right.
So we need to both attract, and this is one of the EDC things has done, talent attraction, to bring people here, to explain to them how they can, live big, as Linda says, live big in a small community and have a great quality of life. But then also try to, I think we call it, seeing engineering and seeing manufacturing through new eyes, both for the teachers as well as the guidance counselors and students and parents, recognizing that you can have a great career and involved in manufacturing that maybe you weren't thinking about before because somehow that was lesser, wasn't as desirable. These are fantastic. We have a program with Eastern Florida State College.
Right.
They've got an aerospace tech associate degree program. They have students who have gone through that program and then done an apprenticeship-like activity out at the Kennedy Space Center. We have 30 of those students have been hired. They are working now. So they have their associate degree.
Right.
They did a 3-month apprenticeship program. They are now working on this spacecraft that will take humans ultimately to Mars. I mean, how cool is that? No 4-year degree,
right? But
they've got the skills to assemble the spacecraft for human spaceflight to Mars. That is unbelievable.
Right.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah, and you're talking to associates, for most people, if they go to school full time, can do it in 2 years or even less. If they don't skip the summer semester. If you're listening, I mean, if you're not happy flipping burgers or doing other things, there are places
We need
that
you.
can change your life. Yeah, there are
We need
places
you.
where we will, you can get the training, and it's still affordable. I
Yes.
mean, or is it subsidized, or is there grants that students can apply for?
Various things. Some of the CPT is largely subsidized and,
Oh, wow.
and paid for. Some of that is state investment. Some of it's private.
Wow.
We also have the individuals who participate this year. We're starting where they actually pay a small, kind of like, they have some skin in the game.
You
as
gotta.
part of this.
Otherwise, you're not going to
I
take the
think
program seriously.
That's important. So it's a combination, but these are affordable things to do. We need to do more of them.
Right.
There are a ton of opportunities here for the future, and they exist right now.
Right now, like today,
Right
go sign
now.
up.
If you want
pay your tuition.
if you want to build rockets, you want to build
Right.
satellites, you want to build spacecraft, you want to develop bombers for the next generation. If you want to do commercial aircraft, there are jobs in this community right now, and there will be for the future.
Yeah, I got about I want to say now 4 friends at Embraer.
Yeah.
So since they've been on the Space Coast, which has only been a handful of years, now they've been assumed by Boeing, who's also here locally, and they're just building, again, private jets, executive jets, and But I got friends from the assembly line to more with the engineering background, doing the more white collar kind of work.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm seeing like even my peers, are embracing what's happening and giving up their old school thought, or maybe even ditching, their previous career or their expertise. You don't have to have a degree for some of these tech jobs. You don't like you've been mentioning, and some of them do paid training. Some of them are so hungry that they will pay you to come in, shadow somebody, and then once you kind of graduate their program, they'll give you the full wage.
And you work with organizations like CareerSource, Florida, CareerSource Brevard, for OJT for the on-the-job training to help subsidize and pay for an individual, so they can kind of get a feel. Is this a job for me? Is this kind of company I'd like to work with? And the company in turn is saying, okay, is this a good employee?
Right.
Do they have the skills we're looking for? Do they have the social skills? Do they recognize the importance of showing up on time and doing a good job and being ethical and all those other kinds of considerations? So all of that, the community needs to play well together, and I think we are good partners with the EDC being a key component of it, and frankly, say with a little pride, driving some aspects of that.
Yeah, which is terrific. How would you describe the board at the EDC? Is everybody a big contributor, or is everybody into manufacturing or aerospace backgrounds?
No, there are those of us who come from the manufacturing, come from aerospace, but no, it's a very diverse board of different business backgrounds, personal commitments, and experiences, academic and otherwise. And in terms of the officers that I serve with, for example, one of them is with Florida Power and Light. The other 2 are with smaller businesses that providing either products or services. So we have diversity there. My background is that government and community relations. I try to make a contribution in that regard. But you see that across the thing. The one common thing you see, that at least that I've seen and been impressed with, is commitment. Right. Commitment to make this community really, really, really good. Right. And across the board, economically to be alive and with a lot of promise for the future, but then also to think about quality of life and people thinking about, how do we deal with housing to make sure that there's housing for those who are not making $100,000 or plus dollars. Right. And so we've got committed individuals who care about the community. Yeah, and affordable housing is always a thing. Especially with my background with real estate, there's always talk about that. And right now, the rental market is it's really incredible. I mean, it's a great time to be a landlord, but it's to rent right now. I mean, it's almost for the same square footage, you're almost paying 2 mortgages for the cost per month in rent. So it's there's got to be a change in that, and I've heard of some opportunities and some projects that are happening. Because I see. That's good to hear. Well, I see a lot of groundbreaking, and more apartment buildings are going up. So hopefully that'll help with the demand issue, because that's what it is. I mean, if there was more
supply, then there wouldn't be such demand. So I think that's going to help kind of equalize it. Or again, maybe they're just building for what we don't see coming down the pipe. As far as new jobs and more of an influx of a population, because we've grown pretty fast in the last few years.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not sure, I'm not a student of this, and,
Right.
and coming from the really the property side and real estate side, you might have more insights. But again, some of that might also reflect the baby boomers. Baby
Right.
boomers go out to the suburbs, buy a home, have a family, have the local schools, whatever the case may be. The things that quote unquote we liked.
Right.
Buying a home, buying a car. That isn't necessarily the immediate first thing that someone who's a millennial generation
Right.
is looking for. Maybe that ties them down. Maybe they want an apartment, they want a condo,
Yeah.
they want something that gives them more flexibility. They want transportation options that don't require them all the time to have a car or have a car at all. So, you have to be thinking about this very process, this dynamic change.
Right.
That's not only what you can provide, but a whole generational shift, and you cannot assume that what the baby boomer generation
Right.
wanted and the way we interact with in society and the jobs and the schools and the so forth and so on, the amenities we wanted
Right.
are going to be the same thing that a new generation. And so I'm excited about what we're going to be learning, and the EDC is going to be part of that to see how can we help shape this community and
Right.
contribute this community to continue to make it the community of choice.
Exactly. Are there certain criteria that designate a community of choice?
If there is, I'm not aware. I'm not
Okay.
I'm not an academic expert on
Sure.
the community of choice. So I go with the laypersons.
Sure.
Even in the aerospace arena, I sometimes tease that I don't know how to spell engineering. So I just think of it. What would you think of? And we'll be asking the folks about this. What do you think of when you hear the term community of choice? What does that mean to you?
Right.
I have a funny feeling that we're going to have a fairly diverse set of responses to that we're going to have to think through. Okay, I thought it was this, and you thought it was that, and maybe there's some overlap,
So
but maybe there's some
there's
significant distinctions.
Yeah, so there's no certified definition where everybody agrees. It's kind of open to interpretation.
From my vantage
Right.
point, there is. Anybody who says unless they're at such a high level in terms of describing it, I don't know how they would settle on, here is what a community of choice, here's what that means,
Right.
beyond maybe a set of principles around which people can operate. But how it's applied in this community versus another community can be very different. But you
Sure.
still then have to make it so your community can compete and attract the kind of workforce that's going to make us continue to allow us to be successful and do the things, expand the commercial space opportunities. And when you think about it, this community one day will put humans on Mars.
I know.
We will rewrite the history books
Right.
so many times over and launch us into a future that we could never foresee any more than someone in 1965 could have experienced or foresaw. What did landing on the moon in 1969? What would that mean for
Right.
for this community, for this nation, for the world?
Well, I mean, use your imagination.
Yeah.
Going to Mars is just going to be. And what's great is there's private individuals who are almost kind of making a little battle. I think between Bezos and Musk, they're kind of weeking at each other, who's going to get there first. I think they're all clamoring to build the first moon base. Because I guess that's got to be the launching off point to Mars, or just from what I hear, and hearsay, some articles. So I'm not sure if they're entirely based on fact, but I do know that publicly, there is a kind of a battle.
Well, and it's there's always, a matter of fact, one of the terms I've heard more here than any other place was competimates.
Yes, I like that.
Frenemies.
Frenemies, yes.
And it's true. It operates even with the kind of the government contractors. But as I've been thinking about it, when I went back and think we would have kind of government or old space,
Right.
and then we had commercial new space, and at one point it was either or.
Right.
You were either going to have this or that. They were battling one with another.
Butting heads. Yeah.
The next iteration of that was and.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was a better place to be. And I think largely that's a foundation of where we are right now, is integrating both into and. But I even think that the models, the notion of we have government contractors and government space and commercial space, and it's going to be doesn't reflect the reality, the changing reality of the integration. We're moving together. We're not in our individual silos. Okay, we will get commercial services to do this and for this government program. Now, you've got the Lockheeds and the Northrop Grummans and the Blue Origins and the SpaceXs, et cetera, across the board, and Boeing themselves operating in both arenas, partnering together on things for a commercial element of a government program like Artemis to go to the moon. So the models are changing. I think of it as future space, not old space, not new space.
Right.
We are in the process of designing, shaping, building future space. It's here now.
Yeah.
It will be different in 5 years. It'll be different in 10, 20, 30 years out. But the Space Coast is at the epicenter of future space.
I love that. And that's why it's such an exciting time to be alive, and especially call Space Coast your home, because we're seeing innovation like never before. We're seeing the possibilities. I mean, it's thrilling. It's like we're living in the Jetsons, but we're almost there, kind of. But again, it's in our own backyard, and so you may be out to dinner, and you may see somebody with a Blue Origin shirt or something else, and kind of eavesdrop on what's going on. And those kind of cool things happen only here. This is something that's exclusive to. And
it's important that we not take it for granted. When you live in Washington D.C., as I did, after a while, it's like, oh yeah, that's the Washington Monument. Oh yeah, that's the Lincoln Memorial.
Yeah, take it for
that's
granted.
the Capitol or the White House, whatever. Whereas people would come and visit us, friends and family and so forth. It was like so cool. This is something I just seen in a book or so forth. It's part of our heritage, part of our history. Here, it could be you become kind of complacent. You're kind of like, oh yeah, we have that. Well, when I have family come here, like at Christmas time and so forth, and we go up to the visitor complex and see Atlantis and talk about the different things, or see a rocket launch, it's like blows their minds. The things that blow people's minds are the things that we experience almost on a daily basis.
Exactly.
So it's critical that we maintain that enthusiasm, that excitement for the future, and I think we will.
I think so as well. It never gets old. A monument is a monument. It's not going anywhere. Okay, it's a spire in the ground. It's and that goes for a lot of different just static buildings and stuff like that. Monuments are great. They're a great reminder. But watching something living and changing, seeing drone ships capture rockets returning back from space. I mean,
it's like who would have thought?
Who would have thought? Yeah,
I can remember earlier in my career efforts to do that, and they were like von Braun, blowing up rockets. When they first started, and it's like, how are we going to do this? The space shuttle, you go up to see Atlantis. They've got a movie talking about all the different things that failed, the tiles that failed, etc. But you keep moving forward, and to the point where you don't give up, and you're successful, and you work to accomplish your dreams. And this is a community that is doing it, has done it, and will do it. Yeah,
I think we are living the dream on the Space Coast. That's a good way to put it, Joe. Well, listen, we're coming up on about the last 5 minutes.
Wow.
Can you believe an hour already?
No,
flew by. I know. It's funny how when it feels like a conversation, it doesn't feel like you're working or you're on a time crunch. So I've kind of been looking at monitoring our time. So in the last 5 minutes, because this is a quarterly thing that we do with the EDC. What could you tell the people? Let's go back to 2019. Name one accomplishment that you're very proud of the EDC, and then let us know what we could prepare to expect in 2020.
Wow. Well, two things that come to my mind for 2019. One is that we, as part of our annual annual event, annual meeting, we're able to recognize people in this community for their volunteer work, for the legacy and the heritage of what they.
Right.
I think it's essential that you recognize people, you thank them.
Right.
People make contributions. They do it out of a sense of civic duty. Folks think, well, yeah, but they're motivated because it's their career or there's their business and so forth. All right, that's fine, but it's not just that.
Right.
There are folks in our community go above and beyond, and our ability to recognize their efforts and to celebrate together. To me, that's the right thing to do, and the EDC makes sure that we do that. The other thing was that we kind of shaped our focus areas, and we added that community of choice.
Right.
And to me, that speaks to this, in part anyway, to this generational change, that we are setting ourselves up to think about what will the future be. It's not just competing for jobs. It's shaping a future. It's about life.
Right.
It's about life, not just jobs. And I think that the EDC recognizes that, and working with others in the community will be able to figure out how do we stay competitive, an attractive place where people want to stay. It may look different. It may have a different feel 30 years down the road, but that's good because the people then, they'll own it. That's what they want, and that's how they'll shape it.
Exactly. And I'll just leave the last couple minutes for you as far as, because I know you have some bullet points as far as what you wanted to cover. Have we covered most of them, or is there something else that you want to kind of fit into the show?
Well, given my government background, government relations background, a lot of folks who serve in elected officials are vilified. It's a tough arena. When I came to Houston after a couple of years, the business community was concerned about the education system. So someone came to me and they wanted me to run for the school board, and my response to them was, "What's the matter? Don't you like me?"
Right. That's funny.
You're not getting me between a parent, a child, and their wallet.
Right.
It's tough to serve as an elected official. And there's folks that I agree with, and others I don't. But I do respect them. I think they reflect our community. So, kind of a shout out there.
Right.
I had a colleague in Washington, D.C. told me a little joke yesterday. He says, what do an aerospace engineer and a politician, what do they have in common? And I said, what? And he said, nothing. But we were talking, and he says, but as an American people, when politicians, elected officials, and aerospace engineers come together and work on a common goal, we can accomplish anything. We can accomplish sending the first woman and the next man back to the moon, and we can accomplish sending human beings to Mars, and that is beyond the pale. Beyond the pale,
absolutely, yeah. It's I don't know, it's just beyond exciting. It just leaves me speechless.
We're writing history, right? Right now, we are going to change. We're going to change the future course of history, and what a legacy to be thinking about. I must be thinking about legacy as I get older. Thinking about that legacy. What do you leave when you're gone?
And I think that should be a part of most people's intentions. If you're like you said, agenda minded, through your volunteer efforts or whatever else, and you're trying to, do things, accomplish things to build a resume or whatever, improve your situation, as valid as that is, sometimes it's also great to just be selfless. Yes. Because people will remember, not what you did for them sometimes, but how you made them feel.
Yeah.
So I think it's more about, again, not only diving into the community and saying, "Oh, look at me," I'm doing my part. But also to embrace whatever you decide to do, whether it's mentor a kid or help out with the less fortunate, whatever you decide to do, do it with a little compassion and do it to leave your mark. Give of yourself so that people value, not Joe, the board member, but Joe, the individual who helped me and my family at this, crisis.
Yeah, I think that makes all the difference in the world. And I don't know whether it's Mother Teresa who gets the credit for this, but it's kind of like, hey, if being kind and generous and having integrity and all those good things don't get you anywhere, do them anyway.
Exactly. I love that. Great kind of final thought. So once again, thank you so much for being here, Joe. This has been another episode of Business Elite Brevard Edition, where we bring you the innovators, influencers, and industry leaders right here from the Space Coast. Until next time, thank you so much. May business be bright, and may your days be successful. From here, from the Space Coast Podcast Studios, this is Jesse. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, we love you. Have a great weekend.